Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going over the new gold brick toon Tyler. Now he is the first fast gold brick toon that we're going to be seeing. He will be in a choice box where you can choose either Tyler, James, Krista, Glenn, or Angel. So that's a very nice option because last time we were only given the option of Glenn, and I don't even remember the last time that I've used Glenn other than maybe a survival road. And I don't know if anyone else actually does use Glenn anywhere. So with Tyler, it's kind of interesting that, his attack stat is okay. I wouldn't say that it's incredibly high. I wouldn't say it's incredibly low. It's also interesting to see that he's a collateral damage 2 character, just like James is. And this means based on a critical hit, they will be able to deal damage of up to 100% to 3 adjacent enemies. So those adjacent enemies also do not gain any AP. Your primary target will, of course, but everyone else won't. So it's kind of nice to do a damage spread. But the big question comes down to, will he do enough damage? And that's always going to be one of the big questions, I think. With a lot of these free-to-play characters that we get, they're a little bit on the weaker side of things. Like, don't get me wrong, we've had some great free-to-play characters. I'm thinking Krista was a great one. I'm thinking Kenny right now is an amazing one to get. It's like the S-Class version of Alice. Green Ivanova, another great free-to-play character. Like, there have been some decent free-to-play characters that we've gotten, especially in the S-Class era. And then we've also gotten some less decent ones, I'll say. So figuring out what toons will work best for your teams is extremely important, but also very difficult to do. You have to keep in mind future use of characters and where they're going to really excel. So like Tyler does a lot of damage to a vast number of toons based on critical hits, but you have to understand the nature of collateral damage too. Although it is triggered on a critical hit, you don't exactly want crit damage mod sets because that'll only apply to your center toon. It'll apply more damage to your primary target, but less damage to all the characters adjacent because the crit damage does not spread to the other characters, but attack will directly influence the damage spread to everyone else. So it becomes kind of a balancing act on what you want to use this character for. Like, I have my Priya modded with attack set mods because I want her doing more damage on her second attacks. So because I have a double attack weapon on her, and I want more damage off of her rampage. If I wanted more damage just on my primary target who I'm attacking, I would do a crit damage set. But because I'm more focused on being able to kill many enemies at once versus focusing on a singular enemy, I went with attack set. And that's probably what I would do with Tyler as well, just because he has this collateral damage 2. If he didn't have collateral damage 2, and let's say he was closer to Henyan, who does multiple basic attacks, or Noor, I would use a crit damage set because all of their damage is to the primary target. There is no secondary target that they're attacking. So understanding kind of different toons' abilities or specialist skills is extremely important when deciding on the weapon, the mod, and even if you're going to pick up the character or not. Now, with Tyler's Rush, 76 AP, which is normal, but honestly it's a little slow in the S-Class era, he deals 650% damage to a line of enemies, up to 2 teammates get 50% attack for 2 turns, and then he gets plus 40 crit for 3 turns. Now this is kind of interesting to me, the plus 40 crit, just because being a yellow character, you can craft him a crit expert weapon, meaning that every single basic attack that he performs will be a critical hit, which is perfect with collateral damage too, for triggering it. Next, when we take a look at his active skill, it's a turn 2 active skill. This character recovers from all penalties and gains plus 50% bonus HP. So recovering from all penalties is pretty nice. There's not a lot of trauma being used on defensive teams, especially not on the first turn. The 50% bonus HP, not a huge fan, again, because it doesn't help with infection. It doesn't stop bleed, stop burn, stop maim. So it just has less use than normal HP. I would have liked to see like a 25% HP over time, over like 2 or 3 turns. That way it would be like a direct counter in some ways to Trader, even if it was just 15%, for example. Just, I don't like bonus HP. I know I've expressed this in a lot of my videos. It's just there are so many ways around it, and although it can help, it doesn't help enough in my opinion, just based on the state of a game right now. I will say the recover from all penalties is decent. It would be better if we saw like a plus 40 or plus 30 AP gain with this, and I mean a flat amount of AP. I'm just thinking if on the first turn Tyler attacks someone and he gains his, let's say, 40 AP from having huge bonus on his weapon and a huge leader skill. If on the first turn he becomes impaired, for example, if you use this active skill, you recover from that so you can gain AP. If he had been able to gain some AP on this active skill, it means you could recover, you would gain your AP. If it was enough, you'd be able to command rush him, just as an example. So I think that would have been just a more friendly, user-friendly, and a better way to kind of incorporate this active skill into the rest of his kit. Now, moving on, Tyler does have a bound weapon, which is kind of a weird one. Tyler's defensive broken bottle, 30% defense, a medium bonus to AP when attacking, and when dealing basic attack critical hits, this character gets 75% attack up over a total of 2 turns. As I mentioned before, what works really well with his collateral damage too is Crit Expert. And Crit Expert will also help with this 3rd slot. Now, you have to keep in mind, though, that this 3rd specialist slot, this 3rd slot on the weapon, will not stack with other attack up limited time buffs. So if you ran, say, Michelle Lead, Tyler, Kenny, like the new red Kenny, if you rushed Kenny and you attacked with Tyler and had the plus 75% attack, it's just going to be plus 75%. It's not going to be additive or multiplicative. It's just a flat amount that'll run out after X number of turns. Now, what I've mentioned about Tyler, about him having this special weapon, I did end up crafting him a very specific weapon. I've added the Crit Expert and I've changed the defense to attack. And this is important. Don't change it to crit, because if you're going to be crafting Crit Expert on his weapon, he's going to hit a critical hit every single turn. So instead you want to increase his attack. A huge bonus to AP when attacking is kind of standard on most attacking tunes, because that way you know exactly how much AP you're getting every time you make an attack. So with this type of weapon, he will always have a critical hit on his basic attacks. It's almost sad in some ways that his rush is not composed of basic attacks as well, because this would create a very interesting type of weapon and combination. He could deal a lot of damage, kind of similar to James, and I guess that's probably why they didn't create him that way, because we don't want a replicate of James. We want a new, unique tune that is different, that'll work in different teams and under different circumstances. Now, the mod set that I decided to go with, I went with an attack set mod set. I went with attack up when impaired, because he's always getting a critical hit anyway with his Crit Expert. I've raised his attack. Now I want an attacking boost, even if it's just on his basic attacks, because we have the crit multiplier in there. I did give him a crit damage mod just for more damage to his primary target. This could have been like attack up when taunted, for example, instead. I do have a confuse resist, just because if he ends up confused, if he ends up attacking my own team, he's not just applying damage to one character, he's applying damage to adjacent characters as well. But I don't think that he can apply that damage to himself, so that is a positive, I guess. But at the same time, you could be nuking your own attack team because he ends up confused. He attacks, say, your Dr. Stevens that you're running on attack, and it kills Dr. Stevens and does enough damage on your adjacent tunes that it puts them in a bad position, basically. So I did use attack up versus fast characters, just because there's a decent number of fast characters on defensive teams. This could be attack up versus alert as well, because there are a lot of alert tunes now. We're seeing that with Trader, Pete, Imani, Shane. There's just more tunes in players' banks, I guess, that they can use for defensive teams. And defensive teams change so often. Mods change, weapons change. one tune changes, which forces another tune to be swapped out because of overlapping abilities or abilities that just don't work as synergetically as you want them to. So a free-to-play attack team that I kind of theory built up has Ivanova as a lead. I have Franklin, who is the season 12 tune, and he's okay. Like, I showed you guys a video, he can do a high amount of damage. I do like his execute. I wish it was beheading, but this video is to primarily showcase if Tyler is usable. And I mean against some of the tankiest teams in the game, because this is kind of the standard type of team that we're going to be seeing. We're seeing traders on defense, a Pete lead to create tankiness, Shane with his bodyguard. We're seeing Shiva a lot because of her payback. It prevents that turn 1 rush. Imani less so, but I added her because of her impair ability, and it can be used like right away. This team definitely is very strong on the defensive team. And the importance of my attack team is to showcase a free-to-play attack team, because Tyler is a free-to-play tune. Now, what I've noticed is that Franklin is the one who's doing the majority of the work. Tyler, even though he's hitting critical hits, even though he has collateral damage too, when he makes an attack, you're not seeing a ton of damage. I did 1,000 damage on a critical attack with plus 75% attack. Meanwhile, Franklin hits once and he does double that amount of damage on the center tune. It's such a contradiction to the amount of damage that someone like Franklin can do when we're looking at Tyler. And Tyler had a bigger attack buff on him. He's hitting for a critical hit every single time. So I don't know if Tyler is going to be the tune that I pick up. I'm honestly considering picking up Krista because I never did at the beginning. And with Mia's weapon in the league store again, or in the season store, well, the first one, I'm going to craft one for Kenny. So I'm going to make it very defensive, but still have AP on attack. The next one that I want to craft would be for Krista, because I already have team player on the last slot. If I can make the third slot a splash weapon, then I could create a very clever team, a team similar to my gentleman video where I utilize attack up when slowed, impaired, or taunted. And I think that could be really valuable to use. Like, I just find this type of attack team to be too slow, and it's just not effective enough at breaking down some of these very tanky and difficult defensive teams. Like, although Tyler looks pretty good on paper from the sense of, wow, his kit is pretty synergetic. You give him a crit expert weapon and he will crit every time he does a basic attack. Now, he's critting every time he does a basic attack, yet he's still not producing enough damage, even at plus 75% attack. So it's kind of just demoralizing in some ways. I just don't know how I can make Tyler more powerful, and with him having this bound weapon, it's just forcing us to kind of use it and invest more armory tokens. What I like about Krista is that she doesn't have a bound weapon. So it's very easy to craft something for her, get a 5-star weapon, the Mia's pistol, or I think it's a pistol at least, and hopefully get one craft on it. You don't even need AP when attacking. You just need that weapon with splash. And I know it might take a while, but crit expert would definitely take a while for Tyler. Overall, I'm just finding it very difficult to be consistent with Tyler. I can't produce enough damage that makes me want to get him right now. I already know that Krista can do a lot of damage. I know her active skill can defense down the enemy. I know that with a splash weapon in her waist knot, she will be able to devastate some defensive teams just by utilizing the enemy's biggest advantages against themselves, especially if we're going to be seeing slow towers coming back. If I use an attack up when slowed mod on her, and let's say I run a command tune and I give her that splash weapon, I could end up KOing the whole team on the first turn just by not rushing, just by utilizing my mods well and utilizing my tune well. Overall, I just don't see how I can make Tyler as viable as I would like to. On paper, he looks good, but it's just the damage output just doesn't seem high enough. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video. I hope you guys found it informative, and whoever you guys end up picking from the choice box, just think about how you want to use them in the future.